Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're doing something a little bit special on this Sunday. First and foremost, I'm using a voice that is totally unnatural, and I apologize for that. I'll try to modify my voice to what I actually sound like when I'm talking to my 11-year-old. I'm here with Drew Kelson. Drew Kelson is obviously a Longhorn grad. He's been a contributor to InsideTexas.com since he graduated. And Drew and I were chatting, and we thought this might be a good platform for Drew to, one, respond to what's going on the board, but also to give you viewers, you readers, an opportunity to experience maybe what these players now are experiencing through a player's perspective. But before we do any of that, I just want to ask you, if you can, please subscribe. It really, really helps this channel. It allows us to grow. It allows us to do more things like this. Hit that like button, all those things that all the children now are saying, like and subscribe, please. That's really helpful. And then, check out this influence page I just did. That type of stuff. That's what we're really, really looking for. All this is powered by InsideTexas.com. So anything that we're giving you here is going to be further amplified by spending some time over there. It's a really great community. But before we get any further, I think, Drew, it would be really good for the folks to kind of hear, well, how did you get into this? What brought you to Inside Texas? What got you to this place? I think let's start at the beginning, Drew.
Man, thanks, LC. Man, this is pretty cool for me. I finished. I guess I went to Texas 2004 to 2007. Played linebacker, running back, safety, mostly linebacker. We lost 7 games while I was there. Won 2 Rose Bowls, a Holiday Bowl, and what was it? A Fiesta Bowl. But yeah, 3 out of 4 of my bowl games were in California, which was great. But when my senior year, I actually started doing some coverage with kind of the Texas football website. And I was doing more on the microphone. I was kind of hosting and interviewing some of the players. And I don't know if some people may remember Michael Huff had that role prior to me, which was really cool. But when I finished school, I had an opportunity I had a few places, but I had an opportunity to just start contributing to a board. And there were a few options in Inside Texas, which was one that I kind of got involved with. In literally 2008, I've been a member at Inside Texas. And I used to contribute and write a bit more. And then once life and work kind of got caught up, I just became a member on the board. And I found myself like not being able to contribute and give my thoughts as much on the board as life got super busy. So,
right.
Yeah, I just dabble, and I'm reading on the board every day. And I find myself at the end of every week, man, there's a lot of topics that have come through that, man, it would have been good to share my insight on or my thoughts.
Yeah.
So this is pretty cool opportunity.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, there are so many, if you do check it out, there's a lot of stuff going on there, man. We've obviously got our analysts and our experts that are bringing breaking news, especially on the recruiting trail, letting you know what's happening in advance. But I mean, there is so much that's happening there in that community, and being able to stay on top of it, being able to respond to it is got to be really, really difficult. But this week was kind of crazy for us. I mean, we had former coach of yours come back. We even got on the live last Monday to talk about that. And here we are a little, slightly less than 6 days later, and everything's completely different. But let's talk about, and I love the terminology you used here, but let's talk about that pump fake. I mean, what did that spark for you?
The Akina pump fake.
Oh, sorry. That's great. Look at that. See, does he deserve it? He does.
He doesn't need
he deserves a proper banner. So you know what? We're going to call it the Akina pump fake. How's about that? We're going to learn how to spell.
No, fun stuff. No, it's funny. So yes, the Akina pump fake happened.
Nope. Messed it up again. Can't spell, guys. We're going to quit this.
But we all got excited about it. But the reason why I was excited is because I know the standard that he brought to Texas. And while we've had several talented players that have played under him, and some that, Michael Huff and Aaron Ross won the Thorpe Awards. I think what gets lost in some of this is, even though they're single players that won awards, they were usually surrounded by a great group of other DBs. And so, I was thinking back last week, I was like, man, you had Nate Vasher and Quentin Jammer were playing at the same time. And I know Rod Babers was a part of that group. And so you had a collection of great players at that time. But Michael Huff and Aaron Ross played during the same time. But you had Michael Griffin, you had Cedric Griffin, you had Terrell Brown, You had guys who were contributing, guys who were talented around that guy who just stood out, right?
Right.
But then even with Kenny Vaccaro, not to skip Earl Thomas, because Earl Thomas was one of his own right, but
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
should have been the Thorpe Award winner. But Kenny Vaccaro played with Aaron Williams, Shockey Brown, Curtis Brown. I mean, you had clusters of NFL talent there contributing and working together. And so when I look at this season now, I'm like, man, it seems like in order to have a great defensive backfield or even one player that stands out, you have to have a collective group that stands out.
Right.
And so I look at who we have now, and I see we have Manny Muhammad coming back. We have Terrence Brooks coming back. Derek Williams is a young safety who's coming back at snaps. We got Andrew Makuba coming in. We got Warren Robinson, who's going to compete this offseason. If Jabbar Muhammad comes in, we get a completely different, type of player who's coming in with experience at that position and has performed really well. So, considering the history of production that Coach Akina pump faking us this week had me thinking about, I got really excited about what we have at the defensive backfield this year, even with Jelani McDonald moving to safety. I mean,
Right.
just the amount of development, not just for this year, but over the next years that we can project is something to be excited about.
When you think about that core group that you just described, I mean, I was actually trying. Often when you think about players, you're like, well, which one played in the NFL? You ran through that list, and I was trying to figure out which one didn't succeed at the NFL. I mean, that was just an absolutely stacked room. And as you know, we've obviously kind of gone through the Texas desert and been out there where it's been very, very lonely for a while. And now we're starting to see more depth coming into the DB room. But can you kind of harken back to that time you were there, and what are some of the things that maybe even Akina specifically was bringing to the table that made for a successful room? Obviously, you had the bodies on the field, but what was the mentality? What was the training? What was that little key that Akina brought to it that really laid that foundation?
It really comes down to everybody being together. There isn't a talent disparity amongst the guys in the room.
Right.
Because sometimes when you have those talent disparities, let's say you have a very strong corner, but your safeties are average, or you have very strong safeties, but you have average corners, you usually have a couple guys that are trying to lift up the others.
Yeah.
I think what Akina was able to do is take a group of talented guys and make them better collectively. So you take an individual talent and you're working on their skill set, you're working on their feet, their eyes, their discipline, their understanding of the schemes, but you're also making sure that they're communicating. And so they're almost tied on a rope. It's like everybody from one side of the field to the other side of the field knows what's going on. They have chemistry. They're communicating. They can flex between different types of defense. And that usually comes with just that connection and that chemistry along with that talent. And so what Akina was able to do was harness the competition. He'd rotate DBs, he'd rotate safeties, but then there are guys he wouldn't rotate if they were playing well. So you knew you had a chance, so you stayed hungry, but you also knew that you had to hold a standard so that you could stay in your spot and so that you wouldn't get rotated in and out as much. And he kept it competitive. And we had enough talent to where the floor of production was always going to be high enough to where he can keep that competition going.
I think we also need to point out that, during that period of time, we didn't have the transfer portal. So some of the players that you mentioned coming in, that might be contributors here, this may be their first year at Texas.
Yeah.
And I understand that this is a difficult question because it's so individual and subjective, but how much time do we need for that chemistry? Because those guys you were talking about, they were in the room. They were following great players as this was going on. And it was in many ways kind of just a next man up situation. And now with the portal, we've got almost hired guns coming in. And one of the questions I would have in that situation is what are we doing there with chemistry? Can we build that quickly? What does that look like?
I just think the culture of the team is already there.
Okay.
Anytime you hear a player talk, anytime you hear Coach Sark talk, there's a we over me mentality. Now, who knows when people are talking to their friends, their family back at home, Like, oh man, I wish I could play, or I wish this, or this may not be fair. Regardless of any of those types of things, because those things may come up. I mean, everyone's
Yeah.
mom wants them to start and wants them to come in and compete and thinks that they're great. But when you're in the building, when you're in your meetings, and when you're on the field, you're selfless. You go as hard as you can. You take coaching. You coach your teammates. You want to help and make each other better. And so anyone who's coming in the portal will have to get with that program. They can't change the temperature in the room. They will have to acclimate to what is already set. And so I do think you need a strong culture in this portal environment so that you don't have people coming in with the wrong expectations. And so Texas has
Sure.
done a really good job of maybe not taking some guys that probably wouldn't be as good enough or to just be good culture fits. So it's not just the talent, it's understanding about being a part of something greater than yourself. And if you go back to, I mean, Nick Saban, who's no longer going to be coaching, I mean, he's a guy who he had that culture. You
Yeah.
understood if you came in, you had to compete. And if you were a freshman, you understood that you would just develop. And so I do think when we do have younger guys, it's hard to leave Texas. Texas is a great place to be, but as long as you trust you'll get developed, as long as you trust you'll have a fair shot to compete against the guys coming into the portal, that's all you really want when you really want to compete at a high level and perform at a high level.
I guess specifically what yeah, that all makes perfect sense. And I think the overriding thing with culture is paramount. But you know, you're dealing with a position that in many ways, they're on an island, right? You're not shoulder to shoulder with your teammate.
Mhm.
And when those transitions happen, am I going to pass off this receiver, or what are these reads that you're making in an instant? A lot of those times you're reliant on that second nature you have with your teammate, that thing that
Mhm.
this guy's going to go get that. And when I'm talking about chemistry, and I think this is what you were alluding to earlier, like, how long does that take to develop? Or are these guys just at the level where it's just like, now I just do the job done, it's over?
No, so it takes time just to learn the defense and everyone learning the nuances of the defense. I do
Right.
think that's the critical thing in the portal. But as I've said this, I'll continue to say it. NIL does not make you a good team or a good player. The portal does not make you a good team or a good player. Hard work is what does it. And so as long as these guys come in, they prioritize the film work. They're getting out on the field together. They're taking time outside of the normal practice times to spend time together, to run routes at each other, to get out and get work with the receivers. I know we
Yeah.
do 7-on-7 in the summers a few times a week. That is when you actually get better.
Right.
It's when you're policing and coaching yourself. It's when you're coaching each other, because that is when you're on the field. After the coach calls the play, all you have are the guys you've been playing with. You're
Right.
not looking to the sideline to your coach. You're not asking any questions. It's the play's called, and now we have to be dialed in together. So
Yeah.
that work takes place throughout the summer. It takes place when no one's watching. So yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Are these guys going to put in the work? It can be done. It's not that it can't be done. It's just a matter of putting in the work and making sure that you just at the minimum you don't have any coverage bust and you're communicating well.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, at Texas, we even had you, gosh, did we have you at, how many different positions did we have you at Texas? I know where you ended, but we were finding a spot for you, man. Like, where, where did we end all the places you went? Can you kind of run through that a little bit?
So I came in as a safety, played
Right.
safety the first two games of my freshman year. Selvin Young got hurt. We had another guy get hurt at running back, and so there was said B and some walk-ons, and so they moved me, um, and actually moved RT Ramonts. They moved me and
Yep.
Ramonts over to running back that year, and yeah, I played running back the rest of my year. Played running back, as in I was the backup running back the rest of that year.
Right.
Logged a few carries, had a fumble against Rice, was terrible in pass protection and pass blocking. Um,
Right.
they didn't coach me up to actually play. They just
Of
coached
course,
me up.
100%. That was all coaching. I mean, you did
It was
play
all
running
coaching.
back in high school, right?
Yes, yes, yes. I
Okay, so
played
you're
running
not
back.
totally unfamiliar
No,
with this
no, no, no,
position.
no. I loved running back. I actually got recruited. Eric Bieniemy was at UCLA. He recruited me to. He was the one that was the one place recruiting me specifically for running back was UCLA.
Uh-huh.
And Eric Bieniemy was at Colorado before that. And when he went to
Yep.
UCLA, he
Yep.
recruited me at running back there.
What
But then I moved that next spring. I moved back to safety. Had a really good spring at safety, but I wasn't going to play in front of other guys who were some of the names I listed earlier.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, I understand.
um, but linebacker had opportunity. So I moved to linebacker. My first time playing linebacker. I moved there in the summer. My first time actually putting on pads and playing linebacker was the summer before our championship season. So a great opportunity and learning curve for me.
Right.
But I had a blast going into that season and just kind of adapting to it, and had some humps there, kind of learning the process and learning how to play closer to the line. But finished that year out at linebacker, and then did 2 years at linebacker, and then moved back to safety my senior year or so. But yeah, that is when I was a bit of more of a hybrid year, my senior year. But yeah, Coach Chiswick is the one who moved me to linebacker for those 2 years I was there. So safety, running back, linebacker, a bit of a hybrid, which at 6 feet, 6'1", 215, 220, I could run, but there just wasn't a perfect fit. And so,
Yeah.
there wasn't a perfect fit in that defense. But I had a blast moving around and just contributing any way I can.
Well, that's the thing though, man. I mean, finding the field is the hard part, and being able to be versatile and to move to those positions, I think is a testament to lack of ego and work ethic. I think that's really great that you're able to do that. I want to talk about not necessarily Bieniemy specifically, but I would love to know, I think one of the things that doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot is what the recruiting experience is like for a player. And one thing, this just really interests me. Can you talk a little bit about whether it was the first letter, the thing, maybe a coach pulled you aside, maybe it was your high school coach? When did it dawn on you that, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting an opportunity to play some college ball here?
It was my sophomore year in high school. I started safety as a sophomore, and they were trying to pull me up maybe my freshman year, but I waited. But yeah, I started as a sophomore, and we had guys who were just getting letters. It was a huge deal. You go
Right.
into the coach's office, and guys were just, "Do I have any letters? Do I have any letters?" I was like, "What's this
Wow.
letter thing? What do you mean? What's this letter thing?" And so I just at that moment was like, oh, there were guys. My sophomore year, we had a few guys who were getting scholarship offers.
Yeah.
And once I knew I could get college for free, I'd always focus on academics and was, wanting to get an academic scholarship. I didn't want my mom to have to pay for college. But once I realized, oh, I can get a scholarship for playing football, that was it. That was it for me. And so I'd already been playing, already loved football, and was playing both sides going into my junior year. And everything just kind of exploded from there. So, funny thing about letters and how recruiting has changed, because we were talking about Akina this week.
Yep.
I'm in the attic this week, and I'm putting away Christmas stuff. We're putting things away. I still have some bins to put away.
Seems like an
And
appropriate time of year to do that. Yeah, that makes sense.
it's almost through January. Just the things are down. It's just I need to put it in the attic. But I
You don't
was in
need to
the attic.
justify it to me. I understand.
Okay, you get it.
I do. I get it.
I had a bin that my mom gave me probably within the last year, and it had all of my letters that I've gotten from everywhere. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
I found a letter from Coach Akina that he sent.
Real.
Um,
Oh, that's dope. Let's see.
um, this is funny because it comes in this. They send it either overnight sometimes,
Right.
or it come in this state of Texas official business letter,
Oh,
and they're always
amazing.
handwritten on the cover.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty cool. But yeah, this is what recruiting used to be. You used to get a handwritten letter from a coach.
Yeah.
Drew, it was great meeting with you today. I hope we've answered some of the questions you have about us. I feel you to be a perfect fit for us, not only athletically, but as a person. Hope to see you with those horns on your helmets. Hook 'em, Coach Akina. It was
Oh,
like
man.
really cool.
That is
Um,
now hold on. So wait, now is that, I mean, what is that? Is that an offer? I'm obviously he's clearly like, but had you already received an offer at that point when you get this letter? What's the timeline there?
I have to go back because it came in this letter. So I think I'd gone on an unofficial visit. I
Right.
think immediately after that unofficial visit, I got an overnight. Let's see if this even has a date on it. I got it overnight. This was sent March 25th. So, okay, that's when I went on a visit, March 25th. This is 2003.
Oh
My next
man.
day, I got an overnight of this letter. It was great to see you. So at that time, I wasn't committed, but
Right.
I think I committed shortly, maybe shortly after that visit. I think the only people committed at that time maybe have been Derek, Loki, and Jordan Shipley were in my class. I think
It's a damn good class.
but
Okay.
those are the only two at the time. And then Brian Arakpo came on the visit with me that next summer. I mean, that summer, it's like, hey,
Yeah.
can you get Rack to come down here? And he and I looked, I mean, he was 6'3" at the time, 210 pounds or so.
Yeah, he did not
Um,
end that way.
but when he was getting off the ball and playing DN, like, hey, how do you say his name again, Drew?
Right.
It's Arakpo. It's like, yeah, we're gonna start calling him Rambo. I mean, that kid can get off the ball. And I'm telling you, from the moment he went to that camp, they made it known that he was special. And he redshirted, put on a lot of weight. But it's funny how recruiting went at that time. There was no social media. You
Right.
got all
Yeah.
this mail. I even in this whole jump pile. This is how recruiting was. I got a letter from I found this from Harvard.
Oh,
Harvard
dude.
University
Okay.
sent me a letter, and I saw this. This was on the inside of it. I was like, why would they send this?
All right. For
They,
those kids at home, this is a VHS tape. It's magnetic tape that you record to. I feel completely like an idiot
I mean, it's
explaining this.
crazy to have to explain it, right? But I was like, why would they send me this? Mind you, because I guess I hadn't opened it before. They sent it with a return notice. So I guess the intent was to put my highlight film or my game film on this tape and mail it back to Harvard so they can evaluate me with my
Oh
name on it.
man, that's crazy.
That I forgot all about that until I
Oh
opened up this
yeah.
game this week.
Oh,
But yeah,
that's nuts.
that's how recruiting has changed.
That so when you're are you going to these camps or so you say you're going to these camps, so you're going to these as a high school kid. Is that the way that you're doing this or people coming to see you? How is that working? I mean, I don't really understand all this. I know that I'm coming at this from a novice perspective, but how are you getting seen? Or is it just because you're playing with people that are getting seen?
Coaches would get out on the road and just go to high school games. So
Right.
that's one
That's
thing.
still there.
Coach,
That's still
that
happening.
was
Yeah.
still there. That's still happening. They would get out. They would go see you. They would show up to practices and see you. Most times, coaches would come to practices during the week.
Right.
That's where they would see you, and then they would write you or invite you to campus.
Got it.
They try to get you to campus, or they'd get you to a camp. Campus was a way for them to get to know you, just to kind of show you just show you the campus, show you, just have a conversation with academics, understand the facilities, how things work. You get to sit in a meeting. If guys have meetings, you get to see them meet and kind of see what they go through. But then camps are, when they invite you to a camp, it's probably when they still want to evaluate you. They want to
Right.
see you play against other players that they're recruiting. They want to see you compete. They want to see you move. They want to see how you carry your weight and how you run. So I went to camp that year, but I think I tweaked something during track season. So I didn't do anything at the camp. But yeah, camps are when you would be able to display, if there were any questions, you'd be able to move around and be able to show how you moved, how you played, and how you performed. So that was a lot of fun because there's nothing like competing against guys at those camps, and you hear about other names from other schools and other parts of the
Right.
state. Yeah, you want to compete. So the coaches in the universities used to host the camps more so than anywhere else, and now they have all different types of camps. So it's a different world a bit when it comes to high school recruiting, definitely than it was when I was coming out.
And I know that obviously social media has made a big difference, but in terms of knowing other kids in your class, I mean, obviously you're competing against them, right? You're on the in your respective leagues in high school, but we hear all the time, the Syntex guys, the Metroplex guys, they kind of build a little community within their class. How does that is that coming from the camps or is that just coming from the competition week in and week out?
Oh, these guys know each other already. They follow each other. They show up at camps. They show up at 7-on-7 tournaments and all these other types of tournaments that we had a one state like mandated 7-on-7. You had to play with your high school team. We had
Hmm.
a Lamar High School 7-on-7 team. That's the only 7-on-7 team we had. And so you would compete against guys, and sometimes you get some teams that would travel into your region to compete, but that's how you got to know guys, at least in the city.
Right.
When it came to the East Texas guys or the Central Texas guys, usually there were clusters of people from the same area who knew each other. I got to know other guys when I went to camps, or when I
Right.
found out they were recruits, or when I found out they were committing. Then we would connect a bit more and stay in touch until we got on campus together. But
Right.
yeah,
And at that time, I know now, obviously, just because of the way the communication has changed, like the the players are constantly checking in with each other, seeing where the other is going, and there's a lot of back and forth with that. Did you have any of that at that time, or did it was it
yeah,
and is it the same
yeah,
way? I know this is a very really naive question. It's not. I mean, we're the same age. It's not like so.
yeah.
I remember how technology works, but was the communication pretty much the same, or what
The
was going on between you and
communication,
like
the consistency of communication wasn't the same, and then kind of knowing what other guys were really thinking. So two guys that I got, I guess, close enough to where I was, pushing them to come to Texas were Frank Oakham and Adrian Peterson.
right,
Frank, he took his process to almost to the end
right,
before he made a decision. And then I think he visited Florida and he looked at some other schools, but he was one that I was wanting to recruit to come to Texas. Adrian Peterson obviously was the best player in the state, right there with Rhett Bomar. So I remember that year it was Rhett Bomar, Adrian Peterson, Frank, and myself were like the
right.
top four
Yep.
in the state on certain rankings. But yeah, I remember talking to AD. It's like, hey man, like why not Texas?
Yeah.
Well, Cedric Benson was coming back, and he knew he could play at Oklahoma
Yep.
his freshman year, and he wanted to win a championship. And so that was
Yep.
the thing at the time. It's like, hey, I can play right away, which, mind you, he's a player who
Yep.
deserved to play right away.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So fair to him to not want to take less snaps behind Cedric Benson, and said B didn't want to share snaps either.
No, no.
So it was really more of an issue with timing than it was anything else.
Sure. That makes sense.
But yeah, those are two guys that stick out as guys that I tried to work with. Anytime I saw them in person, it's like, hey, let's come be a horn. And
That's
I
great.
was able to get one out of the two.
That's good. And obviously Rhett Bomar wanted to sell cars. So I think I get it. I totally understand why he would go
That's
to
why you go to
Oklahoma.
OU.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great, Drew. I mean, I really appreciate you sharing this stuff with us. It's really rare, I think, for us to get that level of insight. And as we move forward, we're going to try and make this a little bit more two-way. Talking and answering some questions that may appear on the board. And if you're not on the board, look, we hate to make this an advertisement for it, but it's just such a cool community for everybody to kind of talk ball. The insight is phenomenal. The amount of information that we're getting, especially in advance of the national media, is really quite phenomenal when you consider the sources that our team is dealing with. So please check us out. It's $1 right now for a month, and that's something you really can't beat. Let us earn your business. Come check it out. We would be grateful to see you there. So as we move forward, we'll create some options for you to maybe communicate with Drew and let him process some of this information before he comes out, so he can give you some more insightful, in-depth information than just what we normally have on Monday and Wednesdays, which is our live chat shows. And please, if you can, like and subscribe to this channel. It really does help us out. Drew is very expensive. We are just barely getting by affording him. So the more that people subscribe, the more we might be able to afford. He's still wearing his college clothes, guys. Like this is all swag that he got from the athletic department. So we need to really make sure that we can highlight some more opportunities for Drew to earn some money. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd be greatly appreciate it. Other than that, is there anything you'd like to add, Drew? We say goodbye to the fine folks.
No, nothing more than that, LC, man. This is fun, and I'm looking forward to continue doing it. Inside Texas is a fun place, and I'll just be pulling things from the board that I don't get to touch on throughout the week. So just look forward to connecting with everyone, man.
Absolutely. Everybody take care. Hook 'em.
Welcome.